Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Facebook Live and Eating the Elephant. For those of you unfamiliar with Eating the Elephant, this is a Facebook Live series that we do twice a week, and we talk about Hurricane Michael recovery. We try to give you a few tips on insurance and then just some regular recovery information as well. We're outside. I know this is not our normal thing, but as I was looking across the street at a client's house, I asked if I could sneak over on their dock. It's beautiful. When I came over here tonight, it reminded me of all the great things. You see a lot of down trees, you see blue tarps on roofs, and you can get discouraged. But then you can see a sunset like the one behind me, and there's just no question what a great place it is to live. I wanted to start on a dock actually tonight because docks and seawalls have become a question again this week. In fact, today with some folks, and I wanted to be clear with people. You may have other structures coverage on your homeowner's policy. And even if that's so, that doesn't necessarily mean your dock or your boathouse or your seawall is covered. Generally speaking, I'm going to tell you how it works. Every situation is different, and you need to talk to your adjuster or to your agent. Usually, your dock, your seawall, things like that will be covered for wind damage, but not for water damage. And there's a lot of discussion that, well, the wind is what moves the water. The wind of the storm of the hurricane is what pushed all the water. While that's true, if water is the primary cause of damage, that is a flood insurance issue. Rising water, storm surge, wave action, those are flood items, and that's generally something that's covered by a federal insurance policy called a federal flood policy. The problem with the federal flood policy is there is a specific exclusion in those policies for things like property over water, docks, seawalls, piers, wharves, things such as that. So if it's water damage, chances are your dock or your boathouse may not be covered. Certainly there are exceptions, and there are situations that we have come across that those things have been covered even though they were clearly excluded or not covered under the policy. However, it could be covered for wind, and so if you can show that there was wind damage, for instance, the top of a boathouse was torn off, or things were laid up on the beach where there was no significant storm surge, say you were up in a bay or a bayou, something like that. And I want to give you an insurance term that you may want to be familiar with. This insurance term is called concurrent causation, and that's just an insurance nerd term for more than one thing causing the problem. If you end up with a concurrent causation problem, you may be in better shape than you think, because if you can show that both wind and water cause damage to your dock or your boathouse or your seawall, you might, in some cases, be able to get around some of the exclusions in your policy. As I said, every situation is different, every policy is different, and this can be a pretty heavy lift, so it's going to be something you're going to have to work at and maybe get some help with. But you may require an engineer, you may require specific help from your agent. There's all kinds of situations, but I did want you to be at least familiar with the terminology. Moving back to sort of what's going on Facebook this week, I've noticed we got a bunch of new players in town, and I'll be honest, it makes me a little nervous because, to be quite frank with you, I'm a little antsy about new people in town right now. I know that we need outside help to recover from this storm, but obviously we've had some bad experience with some people that have come out of town as profiteers, so I would just remind everyone to be careful. And for those that are new in town, particularly those that jump onto Facebook, onto Hurricane Michael updates or some of these other groups that everybody's gotten to be involved in, let's remember that you and I, all of us, have had 9 months together to work on these problems together and to build some trust in one another. And these people that are sweeping into town right now, particularly a couple of public adjusters and attorneys, they don't really know us, and they don't really know what our problems genuinely are. They might tell us that they do, but they do not have experience with these particular insurance companies in this particular storm, and they don't know your situation. So I would use extreme caution before I hired someone that has just now stepped off the boat and into town. So all I'm going to say is what I always say is be careful, do your homework, use some due diligence, and of course trust your gut. I'd like to talk a little bit about businesses in town because this series does tend to focus a great deal on residential claims, on homes. Let me give you a little bit of information that you probably don't know. Businesses after a hurricane or other catastrophe, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a widespread catastrophe, it could simply be a single structure fire. but 25% of businesses that experience such an event never reopen. And of those that do reopen, about 30% do reopen, but then close within 3 years, either partially or completely as a result of that catastrophic event. Maybe they were able to get back up and running, but couldn't really make it all work. Maybe they had problems with suppliers or employees. Maybe their financing got too thin, and it just didn't work out. So what I would tell you is that's closing in on half, not quite half, of all of the businesses in town could be closed 3 years from now. That's the bad news. The good news is, of course, that some new businesses will come in, buy those properties, buy those businesses, and open up something new. That's a good thing. However, the reason I tell you this is because it's very, very important that if you support a local business, if you like a local business, if they've been good to you, if you've had good experience there, now is the time to support them. It is very, very important that our local businesses, after this storm, get the support of the local community, just like individuals do. And let's think about this. There are lots of organizations. There are governmental organizations. There are churches. We have Samaritan's Purse. We have Mercy Chefs. We have some wonderful, wonderful groups in town that focus on families, that focus on homes, that focus on individuals. We certainly need that. But what it's going to require of us as community members is to support the local business community. The business community is what drives the finances, it drives the economy. And so that is something that you can do. You may not be able to get out and bang nails on a roof or run a chainsaw for a neighbor, but what you can do is you can get out today, you can stay out tomorrow, you can support your local businesses, particularly with your dollars and your patronage. You look at, and I'm not saying that you can't go to Walmart, but I'm saying given the choice, drive the extra mile or two and support someone local if it's at all possible. I say this for this reason. It really struck me today that my office is on 23rd Street at 3106 West 23rd Street. That numbering begins at Harrison Avenue. So I drove from Harrison Avenue to my office, and I counted as I was driving, so I wasn't, I'm sure this number's not exactly correct, but I counted 37 businesses that have closed since the storm, and haven't yet reopened. There are restaurants, a tire store, a car wash, 2 car washes, a couple of banks. There are businesses that have yet to get there. So I think most of those will. Most of the ones that I saw today looked like they had work going on, looked like they were going, but it's going to be very important when they get open to support them. And I would say to you that the ones that are already open, those are the guys that really worked hard to get there. They found a way to wrestle with their insurance company, their adjuster, their contractor, and they're open because they really, really wanted to be open and they worked hard to get there. So reward them for that effort. Reward them for getting back in business for you so they could serve you sandwiches, so they can repair your tires, so they can fix your dinner. Whatever it is, support them. Support your local businesses now more than ever. And I would say to you as well, remember the people that have helped you. Remember the people that got back in business to serve you. Remember the people that gave you good advice. The people that maybe gave you a break when you really needed one. The neighbor that was able to provide you with some gas for your generator. The person that brought you a meal. The person that gave you good advice or stood up for you in a difficult situation. What I would tell you is it's very important, now that we can take a little bit deeper breath, to go back and thank those people and let them know that you appreciate it and how important they were to you. I want to close with some very specific insurance advice, and it's the new adjuster problem. We've had this going over and over and over again, and it seems to be a particular issue right now where people are on their 4th, their 5th, their 6th, 7th adjuster sometimes. As the mop-up begins, as there are fewer and fewer claims left open, there are going to be fewer and fewer adjusters on scene, and people will go home. The remaining claims those people had will have to be reassigned to someone new. I know this can be extremely, extremely frustrating. I feel for you, but what I want to do is tell you, I think, how you can best take advantage of this or to minimize the disruption when this kind of thing happens. What I would tell you is I think you should prepare, and go ahead and do this in advance now, prepare what I would consider an executive summary. And what I would suggest is you need to keep this very short, very concise. I'm a very big fan of bullet points or an outline form where you can use very short words and phrases to get your point across. And I think there are 4 points I want you to get across in this. First of all, I want you to keep it to a single page and no more. So you can copy and paste it into an email, so you can shoot it somewhere, you can fax it. But when you find out you've been assigned to a new adjuster, you should immediately be in touch with them and provide them with this little 1-page or partial page summary of what's going on. Think about what's going to happen. They are going to have to get out your file, something completely unfamiliar, flip it open, and go through what may be over 100 pages worth of information. If you can control the narrative and you can give them the information that is important to you, you're more likely to get more quick attention, and there's going to be less of a learning curve for this person. Here are the 4 items I want you to include. Number 1, a very, very, very short history of what's happened. Don't give them everything, just give them the salient points to sort of let them know how you got to where you are. Try to keep this part as brief as possible. Address the major issues, and I think this is a really good time to use bullet points. We had an argument over our roof and it was paid. We had some difficulty with our contractor early on, that's been resolved. Whatever 3 or 4 or 5 major issues that you've had, make sure you include those so they know that either they still need to address them or those have been resolved. Number 3, address, and again, I think this is another good place for bullet points, address your pending issues. Hey, currently, we're still waiting on a check for our recoverable depreciation for this. Hey, we are working on getting a bid for our shed. We have had our engineering inspection and we're waiting on that report. Giving them a very quick, concise summary of what is going on currently, what the pending issues are, so they can look at that and know right where you are in the claim without having to read the 50 or 60 pages that are a part of your file. And finally, you need to close that executive summary with a current ask or your current expectations. Right now, what I need is a check for $11,400 for my recoverable depreciation that we submitted 2 weeks ago. What I need right now is your approval of the drywall contractor, something such as that. And along with that, give them expectations as to dollars and time. Not, I need to get my recoverable depreciation. I would like to get my recoverable depreciation for all of the interior work in an amount of $11,400, which you've documented, and I'd like to see that within 2 weeks. If I don't hear from you in the next 3 days, I'm going to call you again. They have very specific expectations, they know what to expect from you, and you can set the bar. You can sort of, I won't say dictate the terms, but you can begin to sort of guide the terms, and you can control the process rather than letting the process control you. As the sun goes down behind me, I would remind you, please, as best you can, enjoy the beautiful place that we have, despite its many injuries right now, and go out there and support your local businesses. Thanks as always for watching, and we'll see you on Sunday.